Good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, and it's 6:30 p.m. You are at a Common Council of the City of Wausau meeting. Thanks for joining us, everyone. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Next up is roll call.
We have 10 voting members present.
All right, thank you very much.
Nine voting members present.
We're going back when we had 12 people here. All right, next up, we have proclamations. I don't have anything for you today. And then followed by pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda and other public comment. I have two who have registered. First up is Bruce Grau. I'm going to take that back.
Bruce Grau, 1115 North 10th Street. In just a few weeks of opening, the new warming center has had to turn people away, setting pace to surpass last year's record-breaking number of 180 unduplicated individuals. Bridge Mission alone has documented 393 citizens who expressed inability to find a place so far this year, a number far beyond the 30 to 50 estimated by the police. A beloved, gentle, homeless woman, Jenny, at the end stage of her disease, died on the frigid ground recently. After calling 911, her husband was dragged away in handcuffs, reportedly because of suspicion by the police that he was involved in her death. They're both Native American. By numbers alone, your response to the reality of homelessness and lack of affordable housing is proving inadequate. The climate of our housing shortage is in acute crisis. Your anemic approach has resulted in a policy of violence against poor people in Wausau, our fellow citizens who comprise almost half of the population, who live one car, medical, financial crisis away from homelessness. It is violence to allow someone to go without a secure place to live. It is violence to maintain an unacceptable access to quality health care in this county. It is violence to allow a person with an end-stage disease to die on the frozen ground. And it's violence to handcuff a grieving spouse reacting to such a deplorable scene. You have at your disposal the means to end this violence now. You have the money. You have rapid response models like in Hennepin County, Minnesota. You have community members ready to support you. Every person who came here to support the mall project should be here now to support this extensive effort. The police, our health systems leaders, regional employers, AARP, downtown business owners should all be here, calling for immediate and expansive rectification. Providing universal, secure housing does not just improve aesthetics, boost the economy, make our community healthier, and free the police to address more high-level crimes. It underscores the statement that you support housing as a human right. Failure to seize this moment holds you complicit in needless future misery and deaths to our fellow poor and unhoused Wausauians. Stop acting with the urgency of an oil company transforming to renewable energy. We don't have 10 to 20 years to end this violence. Seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity now. Thank you.
Next up, I have Sandra Kelch.
Sandra Kelch, 802 Augusta Avenue. The last time I attended a meeting, Alderperson Watson had stated there's a considerable amount of ARPA funds that have been spent on the unhoused. I have no doubt that that is the truth. However, I'm curious as to how that money was spent. Are we spending money on roof shingles when our foundation is crumbling? To date, there has been little success in solving the chronic homelessness in Wausau. We continue to throw money at programs that do not and have not successfully and compassionately treated chronic homelessness and addiction. Long-term and very clear research has proven that housing first with long-term, open-ended, trauma-informed services is the way to address chronic homelessness successfully. And when I say success, I mean long-term housing, employment, and complete independence. Warehousing in human beings is not a success. Providing apartments without proper trauma-informed long-term services is a waste of money. The only question being asked is how many have been housed, when a true indicator of success is how many continue to be housed after 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. If this information is not provided, then you are not doing your due diligence in spending taxpayer dollars and ARPA funds. When I first started attending meetings on the unhoused, I never heard the word trauma and trauma-informed. Now it's become a buzzword. However, as with most buzzwords, its meaning is being diluted. Please do your due diligence and research trauma-informed and hold anyone claiming to be trauma-informed accountable. It has been said in these chambers that no one should have to live under a bridge. I agree with that. However, privilege and ignorance has been shining through. Citizens of Wausau do have to live under a bridge. The capacity of the warming center was actually reduced when moving to CPC. Additionally, 10-day and 30-day bans have made the bridges necessary to protect oneself from the elements. If you say, well, it's their choice, they got kicked out, then you are ignorant to the effects of trauma and mental illness. On December 4th, a 55-year-old woman took her last breaths under a bridge in our city. It was reported to us that her partner of 10 years was by her side, begging for her to hold on while on the phone with 911. The elements did not cause her death, but years of homelessness and lack of care greatly contributed to her leaving this world at an early age. It was also reported to us that her partner of 10 years was unable to say a proper goodbye. Because when you are unhoused and Native American in this city, you are handcuffed when your partner walks on to the next world. Tell me again how we make life for the unhoused so wonderful that they come to the city from miles away. Tell me again how we are not criminalizing homelessness. We cannot claim that we are a community for all until we truly are. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a committee report from the Board of Public Works Insurance Claims, July 2022 to September 2022. This just gets placed on file. Next up, we have our consent agenda. That's file number 221101 through file number 220108. Are you motioning, Alder Killian?
I'm asking if the minutes could be pulled from the consent agenda,
Sure,
please.
we will pull that. Okay, so consent agenda will be from 030717 through file number 220108. And I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Dinney. Any discussion? Alrighty, all of those in favor can signify by saying aye.
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 I guess we vote. I guess we vote via our thing.
We're going to clear this.
Oh.
And then,
All right.
now you may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We'll back up now to file number 221101, the minutes of the previous meeting, 11/22/22. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Alder Henke and a second by Alder Herbst. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the minutes on the budget discussion agenda item, my comments were completely omitted from the minutes in that meeting on that topic, and they can be found at 18 minutes and 50 seconds in the public access video. So I would just request that those be inserted in a manner that the statements and sentiments are reflected accurately, and perhaps hold these over until next meeting so we can review them when the minutes are more complete. Thank you.
Okay, so is this a motion to amend the minutes?
I would treat it more as a motion to refer it to the next council meeting.
Okay, is that sufficient?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, but now we have a different motion to refer it to the next committee.
Yeah, or
No,
postpone it to the next.
postpone it.
Yeah, postpone to the next council meeting.
Could I, so that's by Alder Killian, could I have a second maybe from, yep, I have a second by Alder Larson then. I think that preempts the initial. Any discussion on this postpone? Okay, I'll just let the clerk catch up to us.
I can't seem to edit the motion in the second for postponing approving the minutes of January, but I've noted that it's Killian and Hanky.
Larson,
Sorry, Larson.
yep. Okay. So whenever you're ready.
Oh, that's why. Okay. Oops. There we go. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, we will see those at the next meeting. Thank you. All right, we are on to the next item, file number 221207. This is a resolution from the Arts Commission approving acceptance of a public sculpture to be installed along the River Edge Parkway at 146 West Washington Street. I have a motion by Alder Henke. Oh, just kidding. All right, now I'm ready. I have a motion by Alder Herbst and a second from Alder Martins. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are now on to file number 150708. It's a resolution from the Economic Development Committee terminating the development agreement with River Life Condos LLC. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Have we had any discussion since, or has there been any discussion or commentary from the developer since the ED meeting?
Yes, maybe I'll let Director Brodick address that.
Yes, I'm trying to find this right now because I've been out of the office until yesterday. So there have been a couple communications from both their attorney and Mitch, basically answering some of the outstanding questions that were still not, conditions of the development agreement that were still not satisfied. It looks like we have answers to most of those. Is there any specific content that you're asking about?
Feel free to follow up.
Well, I guess what we discussed in, or what was discussed in closed session isn't privy to the rest of us here now tonight, but I'm looking to see if they made effort to cure and if that's their interest, and if so, do we consider it?
They did make an effort to cure. I obviously wasn't in attendance at that economic development meeting or the closed session, so I'm not sure exactly what was discussed in terms of, what you would be looking for, but they did, I think it's, let's see, I see communications between Randy and Mitch dated 12/7. And then I have a communication from their attorney dated 12/2 that I think is attempting to remedy and propose a new timeline for the development, and for specifically the closing deadline that was missed.
And did we have any response to them?
Let's see, I mean, gosh, I'm gonna have to, sorry, this is, I'm kind of doing this all third hand or second hand right now. Trying to, because again, I wasn't here. So I believe we did. But I think that, I mean, mainly because I think that what was happening, the last communication was on 12/7, and that was informing them that ED on 12/6 opted to move forward with the recommendation to terminate. Gosh, I'm sorry about it.
If you don't mind me stepping in, it was my understanding that the direction we got from this committee and the discussions we've had kind of led us to tell them that we would be moving ahead and opting to terminate. So that's what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put someone on the spot here. I just wanted to see if there was anything further developed since the Economic Development Committee voted.
Yeah, I think
To
it was an
suspend it.
acknowledgement that,
Yeah.
okay.
It's basically that since the Economic Development Committee, the only thing that we have is an email from Mitch saying, thanks for your efforts. We will be in touch.
Okay, and the last question, if we terminate, and I assume then we'll do another RFP at some point,
At some point, I would imagine.
and if they return, will they still get consideration?
Yeah, I think anyone who submits a response to that RFP would be eligible for consideration.
That's the will of this body. Okay.
We would bring it forward. We wouldn't hold it back.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Part of our discussion in economic development is that there were months and months and months whereby the agreement could come to fruition, where the land sale could take place, the closing could happen. And, until they were in non-compliance with the agreement, and even then, after we'd had that discussion, they waited until the afternoon of the 30th day, the last possible day, that they could communicate with us, and then finally started to communicate. And even following that communication, we really didn't have confidence that anything would get any better in the month or so that follows. And so, that's separate from the fact that we had given 3 extensions, and every time they would come back for an extension, not only was there an extension, but elements of the plan were getting smaller. There were fewer units. There was no amphitheater. I mean, they sold us the plan on the basis of 2 things. First, that they were local, because we had recently been burned by an out-of-town firm. And second, that, there were all of these things. There was this public gathering space, and there were these great condos. And, every time they came back for an extension, there was less of all of that. And so we started to lose faith in the fact that they could actually bring this project to fruition as proposed in a timely manner. I mean, that said, in a future RFP, if they want to repropose, I'm willing to look at any plan they bring us. But at this point, our patience was run to its limit and beyond. And, I think that's why the committee is giving up on this plan. It needs to be, the time for us to wait and extend and keep giving extensions, it's over. I think we need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further comment or questions? All right, I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We're now on to file number 190921. It's a resolution from the Economic Development Committee approving the Wausau Opportunity Zone condominium plat, declaration of condominium by Wausau Opportunity Zone, Inc., bylaws and articles of incorporation of Wausau Opportunity Condominium Association, Inc., deeds of the condominium units, and appointment of city director or on Condominium Association Board for Wausau Opportunity Condominium Association, Inc. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a few questions to begin with. So there's extensive reference to the pedestrian walkway and bridge in the agreement in the packet. Could someone please elaborate on the relationship and expectations that would either create or effectuate with that bridge?
Sure. So basically, I hope that this addresses your question. Please let me know if it doesn't. But basically what we're doing is reserving space we have a no-build zone where that proposed walkway would, or the walkway we expect to be, where we expect that to be placed. We don't have any kind of timeline or design or anything like that. We're simply reserving space at the moment for that eventual development, what we expect to happen.
Thank you. On those comments, there's language in the agreement such that, unit owners will assist with any reasonable measures necessary to obtain board approval and et cetera, et cetera. So what exactly then is expected of the city in relationship to this bridge and walkway? We are one of the owners, correct? That's why this condo agreement or entity is necessary, apparently. So what are we buying into with this, with the bridge?
So I believe the agreement is that we would, if WAS or the successive unit owners develop that walkway, eventually it would be deeded over to the city for maintenance. So that's the idea. I believe that if I recall correctly, the contemplation is that the units 1 and 2 owners would be constructing that.
And at whose cost would the
Unit
bridge?
1 and 2 owners.
Could you name those for the public and the council, please?
The WAS is currently the owner of units 1 and 2, but the way that the agreement is written also allows the successors to assume any successors to assume ownership of units 1 and 2, so that basically, WAS isn't in perpetuity the owner of those units.
So there will be no expectation that the city funds the construction of the bridge or walkway then, is my understanding correct?
I believe that is correct. I am pulling up the agreement right now to double check. And Joe, if you wanted to, okay. Let's see.
Looks like you do have some assistance if you'd like.
Go ahead if you'd like.
I think to specifically answer the question, there is no expectation baked into the documents as to construction of the bridge or construction of the pedestrian walkway. The language of the documents is drafted in a way that essentially requires whoever owns Unit 1 and Unit 2 to build a walkway if a bridge ever gets constructed that connects to that side of the building. So whoever comes up with the way to construct the bridge and gets that done, those 2 unit owners are then required to cooperate and make sure that they don't build something in the spot where the bridge can be connected.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mello. That's helpful.
Want me to stay up here? Yeah, but
Oh, well,
I can stay up if you have more questions.
it may be unnecessary, but perhaps more efficient, so if you're good with that. because the board item had come up, relates more to the city than was in ED, and just concerns about, in the past, there were some board relationships, but this may be different. One, because there's some government involvement in ownership, and I think we were informed that really there won't be any entering into an agreement in a similar fashion as that historical case. So I guess just also as a follow-up to that bridge, whether it's the bridge or any other item in the future, then will the entity that this agreement relates to, it will not be then entering into agreements, say, with the city of Wausau later, that especially that would require funding.
Well, the only way that, I can speculate. The only way that happens is if all three members, the three owners of the condo, agree to do something like that. But generally, anything that happens in any one of these units is the responsibility and the right of the owner of those units. We have drafted these documents in such a fashion so that, to the extent possible, upkeep, maintenance, costs, and rights of whatever you want to do there belong to whoever owns the unit. So the city owns the parking lot unit, and then there's the two other units, and currently WAS owns those. I'll try to say that 3 times. But again, WAS's goal in all of this was to convey those 2 other units to other developers to do additional projects within the city. So it'll be their responsibility with respect to what happens within their units.
Okay, thank you, and that answers all of my questions. Thank you very much. And I just say on the board component, and I think again, it's more of a city matter, and everyone involved, I think, was in the city. This is all being done with positive intentions and in good faith, but I think it can get a little prickly on having department heads or others with the city on board. So I guess I would just underscore my concerns from the ED meeting in that regard. And I suppose if there would ever come a time where this entity or the composite of these various entities with the condo project are entering into agreements with the city, then we may be getting a little closer to language in municipal code as it relates to some of the voting percentages we talked about last time. So I think this is relieving and encouraging what we heard tonight, but if it ever comes to the point that agreements are on the table with the city, particularly funding on the city side, we may want to revisit that. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on Mr. Killian's with regard to the, on page 10, on page 11, it says that it is contemplated and intended that the pedestrian bridge and the pedestrian bridge structure may be owned by the public and therefore operated and maintained by the city. I think that, I don't think at this point in time we're ready to assume any types of maintenance or operation of that bridge, because we basically don't know what that bridge is about. I think that this is one of the things that bothers me with this agreement, is that there is just several of these obligations of the city that may be hindering us later on. I don't know if there's an answer to that, but otherwise I would like to amend this agreement by striking those words. It is contemplated, on the top of page 11, it is contemplated and intended that the pedestrian bridge and pedestrian bridge structure may be owned by the public and thereafter and operated and maintained by the city. Now, there may be an answer to this that, but I'm not comfortable in committing the city to maintaining, operating, or doing whatever with this potential. We can deal with it when it's built. We can deal with it in the preparation of its being built, but we don't know what this bridge is like. I would be glad to amend or to withdraw the amendment, but I think that we have to be careful at some of these points with regard to what we are committing the city to do in the future.
What do you, I'm going to ask the
So is
attorney.
your motion to make that amendment to the
Right.
declaration? Am I correct about that? I'm following your documentation,
Right.
and I just want to make sure that we're clear that the amendment that you've offered to strike that language on page 11 is 5.2 sub A of the Declaration of Condominium.
Right.
So can you press your little amend button on your screen, please? Thank you.
And it looks like there's a second by Alder Killian. Okay, it looks, Alder Rasmussen, if you would like to comment on the
Thank you.
amendment.
Yep, it's
Thanks.
actually directly related to the amendment. I don't think the amendment is necessary. I think the operative word in the provisions that were read out loud is may and not shall. And the difference between may and shall is of critical importance to us when we look at our contracts. The fact that we may build something or we may own something certainly doesn't mean that we do now or that we're obligated to later. And so I think the fact that the contract was drafted by our outside legal counsel and it was reviewed both by internal and external legal counsel, and both of them were satisfied with the contract as written, I think that there's no need for us to try to amend and renegotiate that agreement here on the floor, especially after it passed committee and review of two attorneys. So, I think that any partnership that ever comes forward relevant to that walkway or any other, be it for construction, funding, permits, zoning, whatever it is, all of that is going to take future action votes in this chamber. I mean, we still are in control of all of those things that happen. And, that walkway, if it ever gets built, goes across our public right-of-way. We have control of that. So, I mean, we have control of so many processes about whether that thing gets built, when, if, and how. I don't think we have to amend this on the front end. So I would hope that we would vote down the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I saw Alder Killian, your light was on, but it's off now. Would you like to comment?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. So, historically, with the city of Wausau and policy and discussions in this chamber, I mean, when we hear the term may, that becomes shall very quickly, and then it becomes does, So it's almost invariable, and it's kind of a tiptoe of sorts. We can note that on almost any important policy issue discussed or voted on in these chambers for probably the last 20 to 25 years. So if the city really has language that says it may do something, it's generally darn well going to do it, or at least have the foot in the door to be able to do that. So if it's not necessary to make the amendment, then the language itself, I would say, is not necessary. And to satisfy everyone who feels that language shouldn't be there or is unnecessary, then I would agree with Alder Gisselman's amendment, and it would seem prudent and more cautious just to not have loose language like that. And in terms of attorney review, and the city attorney's office has told me on multiple occasions, and I think it's very wise commentary, that legal review is not policy review. So I'm sure they did a very good job dotting the i's and crossing the t's on the legal front, but the reason we're discussing these in this chambers tonight with this body is more a matter of policy than what's legally acceptable or tightly knit. So I think it would be in the best interest of the city and the people to not have the language this loose, and I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. So it appears we're making an amendment, essentially renegotiating this contract. Would that necessitate the developer from responding if they so desire?
I think if we make a change, the attorneys would probably request to review it, although they might be listening in right now.
Well, both the city and Wausau Opportunity Zone, Inc. are both declarants of this declaration, and not really, it's an agreement, yes.
Right, so if
they would have
if
to-
they were to object at this point, they'd have an opportunity to.
Yes,
if they're
they
in
could
the room.
refuse to sign the declaration if you vote to remove that language.
Okay.
But that is your choice to remove that language. And I would also agree with Alder Rasmussen that it is permissive and kind of future-looking. I agree that it doesn't commit us to do what it says, but Alder Killian's point is well taken as well. It's up to you to do that, but this is what we've agreed to with WAS. If we start amending it and removing language, then yes, they will have the opportunity to agree not to sign it and come back and want to renegotiate the terms of the declaration if they're not in agreement with the removal of the language.
Is there any further discussion? I'm not seeing anybody, so you'll be voting on the amendment to remove that sentence. It looks like you can read it up on the screen if you'd like to.
You may begin voting. Motion to amend passes 5-4.
Okay, all right, so now we are on to the resolution as amended. Is there any further discussion? Alder Gisselman.
I just have a question on the declaration, again, page 3. It says that Unit 3 is hereby conveyed to the city by the declarants and is intended to be owned by the city. Intended to be owned, I thought we owned Unit 3. I just have that question.
We do. It's the parking ramp. I think they used, and Joe Mella can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we just used the word intent to trade these deeds to just solidify or clarify that we're confirming basically the owners of the units. It's not changing.
No, that's correct.
Well-
So just to keep in mind what happens here, we're taking an area of space and turning it into a condo unit. So the condominium law says now we've got a three-dimensional cube
get
of
that,
air,
right.
right? So that you get to own that. And in the declaration, what we were attempting to do was to try to make it clear to everybody who was going to own these units once they're created, because we've got two different parties who are co-owners of a bunch of that land there, who all are agreeing, we're now converting this into the condominium form of ownership. And that means there's going to be units and limited common elements and all that jazz. These 3 units exist, so we say in the condo declaration, it's intended that these units be owned by these parties. To finalize that, what we are also doing, and as part of your packet, is the deeds where everybody basically says, yes, we're now giving the deed, just as the belt and suspenders approach, we're giving the deed to the city, so the deed says now Unit 3 is owned by the city.
I was just hanging on the word intended, which means something in the future. And my question would be, we own it now, but why is the word intended? But if that's legalese, then
That's
so-
why we did it that way, because we were trying to make it clear that that was what our intent was by doing this. So it's making it part of the condo declaration.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Is there any further discussion? Alder Dinney.
Yeah, one last question, hopefully germane. I think it was stated that we need this because we need to look out for the city interests, has the city pondered what our interest is and what our ROI potentially is? I mean, potentially, there could be retail, there could be a restaurant, there could be a hotel, could be residential living there. Would potentially affect whether or not we can make money on it as a parking ramp? And have we analyzed whether we really want to execute the clause to get out of running this as a parking lot?
No, we haven't entertained that yet. At any committee level or anything that I'm aware of.
So divesting ourselves from city properties.
Right,
would
there's
re-
been no discussion about saying that we're going to cease operating the ramp.
Can I ask, do we have we're obviously not making money on the ramps, and we haven't for some time. But we've made some conscious decision here to stay invested in the ramp because we expect a return somewhere down the road in the future. Do we have some inkling of what that could look like? Is it 5 years, 10 years? Obviously, it depends on what they're going to do, but it could take a lot of different forms, and we could quite easily get away from it now if they'd be willing to buy it.
It looks like that's not something that has been contemplated. I'm gonna allow another alder to speak, and if somebody has something how they'd like to address that, feel free to comment after Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. My understanding is that the need for this came about because we dissolved the air rights agreement that we had prior when this land was all split up, and part of it's deeded back for roads and whatever. And so to clarify who owns what and who has the right to what, this document and this arrangement is necessary because the condo law is the fallback to delineate that now. So if at some point we decide we want to get out of the parking ramp business, we absolutely have that option, and they have first right of refusal if they want it and they want to operate it. But at this point, it makes sense. First, we own it and we operate it. We need to have delineated control over what we own and operate today. There's been no future discussions about that. But for now, that's a publicly owned parking structure, and the public has the right to use it. And so to continue down that path makes sense, and if at some point it stops making sense, I think that's a future discussion for our committees. But I think today, we have to solidify who owns what and who has the right to what. And that's where we are here. I think what our goal is for the future about parking or not is like too far in front of us. Right now, we just have to get the ownership nailed down, right? That's why we're here. So, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on Alder Denny's and Alder Rasmussen's comment, we had discussed this in ED a bit, and outside counsel had weighed in. I think the question had been, why is the city not kind of in a process of negotiations, or at least looking for some sort of financial benefit or return that most people or our citizens would consider reasonable. And, I'm paraphrasing, but outside counsel stated because the body had already essentially agreed to these things with prior agreements or amendments. So what's done is done, and this was to quote unquote effectuate those things. So I don't want to give any false expectations to the public that they should be hoping for a great ROI on this relationship, because our understanding in ED committee was that, the farm had already been given away on that. So we are bound, and correct me if I'm incorrect, but we are bound by those agreements that have already been voted on by this body, and it sounded from outside counsel like there's little room at this point to I doubt WAS would want to renegotiate some of them at this point, but there's little room for us to set aside what's already been agreed upon. So I've received questions about this from the public, like, why would the city do this when there's apparently no good financial benefit for the city out of this relationship? And it appears to be necessitated, as Alder Rasmussen said, and as was said in ED committee about the vertical makeup, but I don't think we should be giving the public any false expectations that this is going to bring home some impressive ROI in the future. It sounds like we've already agreed to terms that have put us in this position. Thank you.
Is there any further commentary or questions? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this agreement as amended.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 7-2.
Great, thank you. We are moving on to file number 221206. This is another resolution from the Economic Development Committee authorizing the purchase of 722 Washington Street. I have a motion by Alder Martins and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We're now into file number 221208. It's another resolution from the Economic Development Committee approving the sale of 206 North 6th Avenue. I have a motion by Alder Henke and a second by Alder Herbst. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are now on to file number 211109. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee establishing the 2022 property tax equivalent for Wausau Waterworks, Wausau, Wisconsin. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Martins. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. What we're coming to in our agenda is a list of different things for the water and sewer utility, both to apply ARPA dollars and to amend pilot payments. All of these things are designed to improve the financial health of the water utility. You recall, we had a robust discussion here about the negative outlook that was issued by Moody's a while back based on utility debt pending a rate change that is hopefully coming from the PSC. We obviously don't set the water rates here, but we do control the sewer rate. And the PSC over the next 4 to 5 months is going to be making their decision on the rate case that's been submitted by the utility, which includes a public hearing. So going forward, people would ask, well, why are you spending all of this ARPA money on these utility things? It actually stops further borrowing and the incursion of further debt on behalf of the utility. And it uses federal grant dollars in such a way that reducing that debt load in the utility benefits all water and sewer customers. So that's one way that we can apply rescue plan funding to benefit a large cross-section of the community, because there are actually more water system users than there are property taxpayers in our city. So we can really get a wide public impact when we apply ARPA dollars to things that help out the utility. It not only improves the health of the utility financially, but it really does stave off what would be an even larger rate increase had we not done these things. So all these items that you see coming from finance, even to fund with ARPA the utilities portion of next year's street and road projects. When we decide to do a street and it's a full reconstruction, the water utility is kind of along for the ride. They have to then find a way to fund their half of the project. And so with us using these funds for that, it does mitigate further borrowing, so it should improve their financial state. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had the opportunity and pleasure of speaking with Ms. Grote today about this. And, in the Ehlers presentation from about a week ago, we saw that, it looks like, the water utility is paying about $1.5 million a year to the city in this pilot. And I agree and will support the reduction tonight. But I think this hits a topic that's quite important, that's being asked by a lot of citizens about the rate increases. Are there other options and tactics that could be implemented that could substantially bring down that 65% rate increase? And I think the answer is, in terms of possibilities, yes. I mean, there are things that we could entertain, and I think this is a step in the right direction. So, some might consider this pilot payment kind of a double tax of sorts on citizens, because they're already paying for water, and then this payment is going to the city. And perhaps that's been fine historically, but if we were to continue this reduction over the 10-year period in the Ehlers presentation that it touched on last week, so to reduce this much more and to do it over a defined period of time, I asked Ms. Grote if she could ask Ehlers if we were to bring this down essentially to 0 over 10 years, what would be the reduction to the rate increase. And while we weren't able to acquire a specific number today, the ballpark figure was 20%. reduction. So from 65% to 45%, that's just one tactic. And we could come up with a list of others. And, I think some may say, well, if we do that, we're leaving the city in a poor position to not get that revenue or those funds. And some may also argue we're transitioning the burden to the taxpayer, but I would argue that is not necessarily the case. So we would only be transferring the burden to the taxpayer if we were, one, to continue the expectation of the type and nature of spending that the city has been involved in. So we could practice more fiscal responsibility and restraint in the face of more limited funds from the pilot. But also, if we were facing a void on certain things that we would have used city funds for, the city's in a more flexible position to look at different types of funding, even funding outside of the cities. For example, if we were to plan to spend $500,000 on a certain effort of city money where a federal grant was available or relevant, we've already neutralized that $500,000, and I think we could do this for more than that. So I just want to note I do support this, and I think it would be a really good opportunity in the near future to further explore greater reductions over a greater period of time, because while that may sound like a difficult task to really not get those funds, I think we could do it particularly when we're facing such a pressing situation. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I'm going to let Marianne we did talk to Ellers a little bit today about this, and there are some challenges with that approach. But I do think it also led us to a concept that maybe we do need to work on a more strategic 5-year plan when it comes to these big projects. Particularly, we're looking at, you've talked a lot in SISM about a new DPW garage, for instance. We're going to need to figure out how to get the new firefighters on the levee. We have a couple of other positions that were approved that we also need to figure out over the next couple of years when the ARPA funding runs out. So I do think this is an opportunity for us to be more strategic and do some hardcore financial planning as it relates to those projects. But maybe, Marianne, if you have any comments about the concept.
Sure. I appreciate the idea of trying to reduce the rates. As Alderman Killian said, there would be a hole in the city's budget then. And I think that it is good that we want to try to solve that problem quickly, but you do really need to take time to think of what all of the implications of a change like that would be. So if theoretically we thought that there was other revenue sources and those did not appear, it would be difficult for us to, for example, increase the tax rate to cover the lost about 1.6 million, 1.59, because of levy limits, for example. So, we would have to have a well-formulated plan, I think. One of the things that I talked to Alderman Killian about was, if this is something that you would like to solve, you could step the reduction down over a period of years so that not any specific year would be that significantly impacted. Now, would that be a solution to the rates immediately? No, but you could go back and reevaluate your rates at a later time as those reductions took place. But I really think, evaluating this holistically is the appropriate strategy to take. As the mayor indicated during the budget process, I did kind of alert the committee or bring it up that we do have these unfunded future costs. I think the mayor did a great job of outlining those, the positions that ARPA is funding or the SAFER grant, as well as the public safety or the public works facility, which based on its current budget, the annual debt retirement would be about $800,000 a year. So
that is a lot of future costs that we, have talked about some options of funding. We do have some tax increment districts that are getting ready to retire. So if we took some time this year and looked at what that future would bring, we would have a better picture and then perhaps develop some strategies balancing the impact to the ratepayers of the utility with the taxpayers of the city, who are generally one and the same.
Okay, I have Alder Rasmussen next.
Thank you. I agree. I think we should look at some creative strategies. I think that, if we were looking to reduce the pilot payment in the utility, I don't know that we could get to zero, but I think if we looked at a set of phased smaller reductions in the short term, that, that may be something that we can absorb. I think that for the unfunded things that we know that we want to do in the future, we are relying heavily at this point on TID closure and recaptured increment as a result. But I also think that, as far as our PFAS solution and our immediate situation with the utility, we are also looking at other options. So assuming that the aid that we've requested from the federal government passes the federal budget, obviously that's revenue that we can use. I believe there's also options that we could look at, perhaps forgivable loans or some type of funding solutions from the Clean Water Fund from the DNR. We certainly want to exploit all of that to the extent that we're able to get it. Because all of that is less expensive money for us. So, whatever options we have, the Finance Committee is always willing to consider those options and weigh the pros and cons. And when they make sense, those are definitely the ones that we want to bring forward to you. And that's really what we've done with this list of these things that are coming up here, is it made sense to use these strategies in the short term to improve the health of the utility. But this isn't intended really to be a one-off. If there's other creative solutions that we can come forward with, we certainly want to consider them as they present themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. And I supported the abatement of the pilot payment, and we talked about it during our finance workshop sessions, and I was fishing for some maybe harder numbers back then on the rate increases that we were anticipating. This we talked about at several sessions. We also talked about it when we adopted the budget. We took some consolation that we were passing on a very modest tax increase. But I would submit, this is one of the ticking time bombs I was talking about, the rates are essentially taxes. So, I mean, if you don't pay your water bill, where does it go? It goes to your taxes. So if you don't pay the taxes, the sheriff comes and sells your house. So I agreed temporarily. We also have to understand that the enterprise, this is an enterprise fund, so ostensibly it's in business to make good water and sell water. So the ratepayers, I think, if you do a Venn diagram, is a bigger circle than the taxpayer. So the ratepayer should share the larger burden. We have a larger base, plus we have large water users. So the Kraft Foods, however many millions of gallons we're selling them, why should they get a break for the homeowner paying an extra tax? And this is an extra tax on them. So temporarily, I see where I'm not saying that the Water Commission wrote checks the city can't cash, but we're in a little bit of a bind and the city should work through that. So we need to look long-term as well, but we can't upend the concept, unless that's what our decision is going to be some days, is to get rid of the Water Commission. But I think the enterprise fund is an enterprise fund. It needs to figure out how to get on its feet and sell water. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions? Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Grote, to your point, we don't want to face, expenses that we couldn't find, other revenue for. I think there's enough opportunity with our budget. If we had a pot of coffee and a red pen, we could probably cut out a lot more than $1.5 million of fat from the city of Wausau budget. So I think how about spend less on elective decadence? That would be my answer there. And then, I appreciate what the mayor's offered on, having a 5-year plan, and we got the DPW expansion or site 2. And I think there too, we don't want to put our citizenry again in another bad position because of the city's mistakes. So that's going to be another touchy issue I don't think we have to get into tonight. But with what has been offered as possibilities, I would offer some possibilities as well, because we do have to act fast. This isn't cable television for people. It's not an elective. It's water, and they do have to consume it, and there are going to be a lot of residents who cannot afford this. So it is urgent that we act quickly and that we do try to find some novel, aggressive approaches to lowering these rate increases, and it can be done outside of the PFAS issue. It can be done. So I would recommend we do that, and we have a special meeting to discuss that. It's an important issue. That way all districts and council members can be involved. I think an audit or presentation for the council, not just to what the money is going, but to who is it going. So I'd like to see a breakdown of, company X got Y millions for this portion of the project, and I'd like to see whether it's consultants, contractors, construction. I'd like to see where that money is going. And as Alder Dinney had referenced, I think we need to revisit our water commission model and paradigm. It's been almost a unilateral oversight body on many of these issues, and with little or no accountability and some very poor outcomes. That's what we've been left with. So I think we need to revisit that. We need to likely revise or change that model or that oversight structure, and the question would be, how do we do that as a city, and what's the pathway? So I think, if we could have a meeting about this where all on the council could participate, I think there's some positive opportunities to maybe come up with novel ideas to get these rates down. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
Okay, thank you. We are now on to file number 211109A. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects 2022 water and sewer replacement related to the 2022 street reconstruction of 4th Street, McClellan Street to Scott Street, and 4th Avenue, Bridge Street to Knox Street. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Dinney. Is there any comment? Alder Larson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, if all these were to pass tonight, what do we have left in our ARPA money fund?
So that should have been attached to the resolution. Let's see.
Is that 3 million-ish?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be about just shy of $3 million.
So out of the 15 million we received, we have 3 million left.
Yes.
And so how much out of all this did we actually put to use for our homeless, or is that a question for another day?
Well, so the agreement with Catholic Charities is $777,000. And then there were a number of allocations to improve affordable housing, including the first one that went to the Landmark for $350,000. And then there is infill new construction for $600,000, and then affordable rental units for $500,000.
So that comes to just shy of, what, 2 million?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Okay.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
All All right, thank you. We are now on to file number 211109B. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects, 2022 water and sewer main projects related to the 2022 street reconstruction of Bugby Avenue, Burrick to Tierney Road, and Burrick Avenue Campus Drive to Bugby Avenue, and Campus Drive Cherry Street to Burrick Avenue. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Dinney. Any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
All right, thank you. We're now into file number 211109C. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects, Torney Avenue. This is McDonald Street to Town Line Road. It looks like I have a motion by Alder Martins and a second forthcoming from Alder Dinney. Any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
All right, now on to file number 211109D. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan, Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects, Industrial Park Force Main. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
Okay, thank you. We are now on to file number 221205. It's from Parks and Rec. It's a resolution approving installation of infield synthetic turf at Athletic Park. I have a motion by Alder Herbst and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? Alder Larson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I voted for this hesitantly because I wanted to hear from my colleagues in the council chambers about how they feel about Athletic Park and installing synthetic turf there. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons to it, and I just kind of would like to hear it. I understand it would be good for tourism and stuff, but would it be good for the park? Would it be good for injuries? You hear more and more these days about synthetic fields and injuries there, and how it's not a good thing, and so I voted for it, and I'm not sure how I'll vote tonight, but I voted for it because I wanted to hear what you guys think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I had questions on this as well, although in discussing it, we had a separate discussion about it in the Economic Development Committee about the softball team coming. And so this adjustment to Athletic Park is obviously necessary to gain the economic impact from the softball team. So that said, I asked about it. Mr. McDonald was there. He talked about the quality and the type of turf that would be installed. It appears that it is a newer version of turf. It's not the stuff that, the older stuff that had caused a volume of injuries and things to players. So, certainly hope that's true. But separate from that, this does reduce rainouts. It drains better. The field is more useful on more days for additional activities, and it also allows the field to be made adjustable both for the two different sports, but also for different age ranges to adjust the sizes. So, I think that in the interest of using that field, more than 10 weeks out of the year, it also shouldn't have any impact to existing users of the park who are using it. I specifically asked about current contract users like Legion Baseball, who plays there when the Chucks are out of town. So it did seem like they had dotted the i's and crossed the t's with the viability of the plan. And it also seems to reduce maintenance time and maintenance days for park department employees who now have to be out there way more often. So installing this in the infield and the foul territory, but leaving a grass outfield certainly made sense. And so it makes the field more usable, and I was willing to support it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Yes, thank you. Jamie's not here, but Mark.
We have Andy Sims here too.
So what happens if how long are you projecting the softball team to, or is it going to be like the Woodchucks forever, great, but, so if economic decision 5 years down the road comes with regard to the softball team, how do we resolve the turf issue at that time?
Well, I think the important thing to understand is that this opens the field up to the other 50% of your population is what it does. Because now you can play youth softball on the same field too, and Wausau West and Wausau East can play their softball games there if they want to.
But we're mostly doing it for but we are mostly doing it in the light of your
Yes,
anticipated
yeah.
a softball league.
Yeah, I think the idea is that, we haven't, Jamie and I haven't sat down to work on the use agreement, but we're talking probably a 10-year agreement, which would be the life of the turf.
And the question, my other question with regard to in reviewing some of the literature about the toxicity of the, so perhaps today we don't know of that, but research is continuing on. I'm just curious that if further research into this specific brand, I know there's a specific type of AstroTurf or turf that you're bringing in. I don't want to call it AstroTurf, but I think we have to be sensitive to the fact that further research, because people are doing that, researchers are doing that all the time, that if the toxicity of that turf does, prove to be a health hazard, I think that we would want, in some ways, to be able to resolve that issue in the light of safety of that turf. That's my concern, because the research is coming out every day with regard to that. More and more fields are being turned into turf, and I think we have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, the manufacturer will certify to us that they do not introduce PFAS in the manufacturing process or in the installation process. I'm not a PFAS expert. I don't intend to come up here and act like I am. So if there is something in the design process is going to be quite involved for a lot of reasons, because of the historic nature of Athletic Park. I want to make sure that the look kind of fits in with the whole thing too. That's very important to me. But that's where Andy and his group will all be right there with us when we're in the development process. And I don't know if you have a PFAS expert or somebody like that we can turn to, but but the manufacturers and everything we've taught, everything we've done along the way is that there's no PFAS in the product at all. But now it doesn't mean that they're gonna certify that there's not gonna find PFAS at the site, because there's PFAS in rainwater, and so there's going to
Well, there's other health hazards besides PFAS. I'm led to believe, because it is being involved with other degrees of toxicity, consumer. I just wanting us to become alert to the fact that research on that is happening, and that we have to be aware that if this does happen, we may have to resolve it in some way. But that's just an inquiry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask them a question?
Absolutely.
Did you bring along the samples for the whole council?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. And I guess just one other point. I think that the drainage ability for turf versus natural grass is, at least in this area, is a plus for us. We know that the school district is entertaining and is planning to install turf in the infields both at East and West, because these outdoor fields don't drain. And my experience with baseball at the high school level and even at the youth level in this area is that teams up here in the spring are traveling to find dry fields. There just aren't any. And so the high school season especially, starts in April, and the weather is really a problem. If you get a late thaw, if you've got frost in the ground, they can't get on their fields. they've bussed kids all the way to Mauston to find a dry field to play on. So one more field that dries better than other fields in this area is a plus for us. So, if that turf infield helps that happen, that's a win. So thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to in part answer Lou's question, I'm supporting this primarily because of the utilization uptick that we're going to get in this. We're going to see more traffic. We're going to see more travelers coming to town to enjoy the event space. And as far as the risk, I mean, my logical thought process here is it's a fairly small piece of turf, and we're probably going to have to, as we start looking at our stormwater utility possibility. I mean, every drop of rain that comes down on a rooftop or on your grass where you fertilized it ends up somewhere, usually the river. So, I mean, it's one component, but if you look at it as the total city footprint, I think the risk is pretty minimal, and especially if it's coming to us without those known contaminants. And then lastly, Mr. McDonald, you had mentioned the historic component. What are you considering there? Is there historic grass or what is your...
The AstroTurf product that we're looking at looks more like grass, whereas the field turf version is more of a green carpet, is the best way to put it. And so I think
100%.
Yeah, but
Boise State.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
Smart
yeah.
turf.
Yeah, it's when you're watching a sporting event and you see where they drag their toe top in a football game and you see the black pellets come up, that's this. Now, there's 3 different types of fill you can put in there. One is the pellets, one is a silicon sand, and the other one is a natural wood fiber. That's what we'd be working with Andy and his group on to make those decisions when we go through it.
There's one point that I would want to add to that Alder Denny alluded to. Due to it's a relatively small footprint, but that facility is fairly heavily fertilized in order to keep it looking the way it does. So that is going to reduce that area of fertilization as well for us. So, I mean, pluses and minuses with everything you do. So, just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I think we're ready to vote.
May I begin voting? Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are now moving on to file number 221209. It's a resolution from the Wausau Water Works Commission creating a special committee, the Wausau Drinking Water Treatment Facility Solar Array Project Task Force. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Alder Herbst and a second by Alder Larson. Any questions? Alder Rasmussen.
Just one, I guess just a comment. I support the creation of the task force. I think we do need to take a wider look at the benefits of solar, both at the treatment facility and the size of the array. That said, I was glad to see that we would have some citizen members on here. It looks like you are planning to have a neighborhood representative, and so I just wanted to give a shout out for that, because I know that we have residents in the immediate neighborhood that are for and against, but I also think we have some that are capable of doing some really good homework and making objective decisions, but I think it's important that they have a voice at that table as well. So thank you for that, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given the predicament that we are in today, I would support this too. I would also think about dissolving the Water Commission and perhaps having. I had first thought that I agree with Alder Rasmussen's position, but I also think that if this committee reported directly to what standing committee? Would they report directly to the council? Or would it be better off to have a standing or a non-standing committee? Preferably like a non-standing committee, say like the airport committee, where there is citizen feedback, but anything that goes through there comes to the council.
Do you mind if I take a stab and then if Anne can
Please.
correct me? Alrighty. So the intention of this was to be much like the policing task force in that we get recommendations and they're passed on to the Wausau Waterworks Commission and this body so that we can consider whether or not we like the concept of a solar array. So that's the intention. No decisions will be made on their own. We really decided that we needed lots of citizen feedback based on what we heard from the neighborhood during the public information meetings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, but I just think that, by having this committee report to the Water Committee and then have the Water Committee report, or the Water Commission, and then have the Water Commission report to us, I think it's, pardon my pun, but stuff could get watered down, I would rather see this committee and possibly dissolve the Water Commission. That's just my thought. Thank you.
All right, just to clarify, the last whereas says that the recommendations shall be presented to the Wausau Waterworks and the Wausau City Council, so it's both, and they're just recommendations. You can decide to discard anything or go crazy on it. Thank you. Alder Gisselman.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a great idea. After attending several sessions on the northwest side with regard to the solar array, I think that this is a good way of maybe moving it off the mark and moving forward. And I look forward to the research and the discussions that I think that will come from this, because I think that we can be looking forward to after the discussions from this committee to citywide solar arrays. And I think that so I enthusiastically look for the work that this committee will do, because I think this certainly has a possibility of leading us into wider discussions with regard to solar and alternative power throughout the city. I think this is a great start. I echo what Alderperson Rasmussen said about the neighborhood. Some active people, really intent on serving the neighborhood and serving also the interest of alternative energy into the future. So I look forward to this. This is, I think, a good start on that movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Herbst.
Thank you, Mayor. I sit on the Water Commission, and I will tell you there are very wonderful, educated people that sit on that commission that really know what they're talking about. I'm in awe. I've learned a lot and continue to learn every day. I cannot see that this commission would be disabled, because these people are the ones that bring forth all the information that you can't even imagine what is going on and what is involved. They are just remarkable. You've got John Robinson, you've got Joe Jean, you have Jim Force, these guys, and Eric Lindman. You've got the mayor on the commission. I mean, it's awesome, and believe me, they need to continue, because we need their input in everything regarding the water treatment as well as wastewater. But no, I'm very much in support of this committee, and they're looking for someone that they can get from the council. They are looking for someone from the commission that would sit on this task force, and also then they're looking to get some people, the residents from that area. But I'll tell you, think twice about disabling and getting rid of the Water Commission, because these people really know their stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. Just trying to replay in my head what I said earlier. I don't think I said we should dissolve the Water Commission, but maybe others did. But I guess what I would add in your list of questions, or I'd like to see added, is some sort of a ROI, best or most reasonable return on investment. We should have some consideration for that. I mean, clearly, we want to satisfy neighbors, and it's great to have them involved to try to mitigate maybe some of the things they're concerned with. But we should first and foremost be looking at optimizing what this system can do for the plant. So we're running 100% of our energy load, if we have to or if we can, from this unit. And maybe doing that requires that we maximize the footprint, and it won't be ideal for everybody thinking that they want to see a smaller unit. So what I'm getting at is, let's consider, is it going to have an impact on the ratepayers? We just talked about the ratepayers, and if it isn't offsetting significantly our costs there, I don't know that this is the most logical. I think it's the most logical place to put it, but if we come back and find out it's going to be a 30-year payback, we're just asking a lot more of the ratepayers and the taxpayers. So we should consider ROI and optimization for the plant energy consumption.
So I don't have a problem adding a bullet point that says consider return on investment, if that's what maybe you're requesting.
Yes, we should consider it, because maybe it's assumed in the verbiage here, but if we don't, I'd hate to see them come back with 3 solutions that minimize the footprint so that we can point to a solar system that doesn't fix, that doesn't turn the lights on. So, yeah.
Sure. So
Simple.
if there's no opposition to me including an extra bullet point that says consider return on investment, I can just add that in. Doesn't look like anyone's opposed to that, so no problem. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. This is definitely the way to gauge wide public opinion. I would say don't assume that the adjacent neighbors are all against the project, because they're not. There's 4 or 5 who will never, ever support the project. The rest are amenable to at least 2 of the 3 designs. Those designs have been drawn, they've been vetted. All of them meet the needs of the plant. One creates excess power that gets sold back to pub service. So the smaller 2 are certainly palatable to the neighborhood. The largest one, which took every tree down on the site, was a problem. And, this will be very close to the residents across the street on both sides. They've talked about landscaping and things to screen it, but, don't assume that everyone that lives near the plant is dead against this, because there are some that are absolutely for it, and there are others that are still on the fence. So I think having someone from the neighborhood balances that out, but they certainly are not lining up to stop the project. We just need something that works for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now we are to the part where we'd like to suspend the rules. 6B, filing, and 12A, referral of resolutions. This does require a 2/3 vote. I have a motion by Alder Rasmussen and a second by Alder Herbst. We're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We're now into file number 211109. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee. It is a correction to the original resolution adopted 9/27/2022, approving and adopting the budget for American Rescue Plan Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund funded projects, Catholic Charities Year-Round Warming Center. I would entertain a motion. I have a motion by Alder Martins and a second by Alder Henke. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. We're now into file number 060406. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving the city's waiver of first right of refusal to repurchase property at 7555 Stewart Avenue. This is Arthur Rentals, Wisconsin, Inc. It passed, it looks like Finance 5-0 and or 3-0. We have a couple of different things going on here. So it passed unanimously, 3-0. I have a motion by Alder Dinney and a second by Alder Martins. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We're now on to file number 221210. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee supporting the Convention and Visitors Bureau grant application. This did pass Finance 3-0. Looks like we have a motion by Alder Dinney and a second by Alder Martins. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. Nope. Alder Larson.
Yes, would somebody from the Finance Committee care to chime in on this?
Sure. Alder Rasmussen.
Sure. So a few weeks ago, Tim White from the Visitors Bureau came in and talked to us about their desire to apply for a grant from Marathon County, from ARPA, from Marathon County's ARPA, to assist them in constructing a new visitor center on the former Shakey's property in Rib Mountain. All they asked was that we draft a resolution that supports their grant application to the county. We obviously are a key supporter of tourism and the generation of room tax, and their ability to have a space that's effective in welcoming visitors and conducting their operations made sense. And so whether or not our support matters, Marathon County will ultimately make that decision. But what we were asked to draft was a resolution that just indicates that we as a body support them applying for those funds. We don't know if they'll get them, but they can certainly try. So thank you.
Any further discussion? I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 8-1.
Great. Thank you. We're now moving on to file number 021216. This is a joint resolution from the Human Resources and Finance Committees approving the bargaining agreement between the City of Wausau and the Wausau Professional Police Association for January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2024. Looks like I have a motion by Alder Herbst and a second by Alder Rasmussen. Any discussion? I'm not seeing any.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you very much. We are now on to file number 021217, another joint resolution from the Human Resources and Finance Committees approving the bargaining agreement between the City of Wausau and Wausau Firefighter Association for January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2024. It's passed unanimously at HR and Finance. It looks like I have a motion from Alder Herbst and a second from Alder Dinney. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Just a quick thank you publicly to our bargaining teams that worked on both of these contracts. There was a lot of back and forth and a lot of compromise, and it was a lot of work both for our staff and for our outside counsel and for both bargaining units that were involved. But I think we've come forward with a product that both parties can, or both sides can live with, and that's a win. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are on to file number 031111, another joint resolution from Human Resources and Finance Committee amending the resolution approving a 3% general wage adjustment for non-represented employees effective December 25th, 2022. That is the first pay period for 2023. This passed unanimously at both HR and Finance. It looks like we have a motion from Alder Herbst and a second from Alder Dinney. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is the 3% comparable to what is the going rate nowadays for, to the contracts and stuff that we're are they keeping up with everybody else? We've had this question, about retaining our employees and stuff, and I just want to know if this is a step in the right direction.
Looks like our Human Resources Chair would like to chime in. Alder McElhaney.
Just to let you know, this 3% passed earlier. This is only, this action is only moving it up to the first pay period, because the pay period goes from the end of December through the 1st of January. And with our new workday system coming into action, it was going to be much easier to mitigate that and starting that. That is the only difference. The 3% has been passed a while ago.
In the budget, yeah.
So we're not adding anything, we're just changing the pay period on this.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, I think we're ready to vote.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, thank you. We are on to our second opportunity for public comment and suggestion. If there is anybody here that would like to say anything. Okay. Next up, I will need a motion and an alder to read a paragraph of content here. So I would entertain that by one of you. It looks like Alder Rasmussen will make the motion.
Thank you. I'll move that we Go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 19.85, paragraph 1, sub G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel regarding a settlement offer received in Marathon County case number 22-CV-284, Lori J. Fish and James B. Fish.
All right, I have a motion by Rasmussen and a second by Herbst.
You may begin voting. Motion passes 9-0.
All right, we will go into closed session now and be back shortly.